This video is about NFX WAVE. This is a technology portion of NFX Unistack that deals with creation of websites, dynamic websites. It completely supersedes IIS, Microsoft MVC, and all of the frameworks that deal with those technologies. Everything is built in. It has a built-in JSON parser, JSON lexer, JSON parser, JSON processor, JSON writer. It has multi-part encoder, decoder. It has many more features than typical .NET stack has. For example, it has a software firewall built in to ward off hackers and other malevolent users. So let me first start by showing what we have in the test environment. So the biggest difference between WAVE and what you're used to in ASP.NET is that WAVE is a component-oriented architecture. You do not deal with files here, although you could deploy your website as a set of files. The approach here is discouraged, the reason being that the whole paradigm of file-based web programming came from the scripting days, when you had scripts and you could on the live machine you could mend those scripts, and that would change your software. You cannot do that with production application, especially the ones that run in a cluster. And although it is convenient for small and personal sites to be able and change some files on disk, you could still do that here. It's just not the primary objective of this framework. Okay. Here the website is more of a component, like a library piece, a component in terms of like a class that you can reuse between different projects that you cannot really do in ASP.NET. Let me ask you a question. Let's say you have a website with CSS, design, images, and all of that stuff. You use this site in more than one, let's say, class library? No, you cannot. There is no such thing as a website within the class library. Here, it is a natural concept. So consequently, here, this app that we're looking at here is a test container. It is a console app. Let's look at the program file here. And it starts from setting up an NFX application container that injects all of the services, service-based application. Then we allocate a WAVE server. A WAVE server is a service in terms of NFX. That is, it is a class that has start, stop, wait for a stop, and all of that stuff. It is a service class that you configure it, you start it, then you pause until someone hits the enter key, and then if an exception happens, I log it to the console and I exit. That's all I do. So this is the full-blown web server. Okay. So to run my site, I do not need IIS, or I do not need whatever it's called, Cassini or whatever, the small guy downstairs here. Okay, and the way it's working is this: the web server is a component just like any other component, just like a logger, just like a a security provider or database access driver or something. It's just a component. There is nothing special about it. Okay, so that's number one. Secondarily, the way how the server is implemented is completely abstracted from you. The current implementation of WAVE server. Now, first of all, WAVE stands for Web Application Framework with View Enhancement. So to create dynamic views, which is of course important for business applications, to create dynamic views of different kinds of business data to the user, show it to the user. Okay, so this is just an acronym, but that's like a name of the technology, WAVE, like a wave on the sea or in the lake or something. So the WAVE server is currently implemented using HTTP listener that is provided on Linux as well and works very well. So it does not use IIS. Okay, it does its own scheduling and everything, and processing and everything. Now, furthermore, the Wave server was created not to be a front server. That is, the purpose of the Wave server is to serve user requests behind the something like Nginx or some other reverse proxy. That is because I didn't want to spend a lot of time replicate. I mean, you could use SSL and everything in the HTTP listener, but I didn't want to spend a lot of time dealing with that stuff. So Wave server is an HTTP application server. Does it have a static content serving capabilities? Yes, it does. Are they as efficient as IIS? Absolutely not, and never will be, because they are used primarily to feed, or how I call it, to infect the first line of web servers that we use Nginx for that. So once you set up an Nginx server, it is an SSL termination and static content caching layer. It has to update its cache. It updates its cache from the application, from the Wave server. But the Wave server, like I said, is not purposed to serve static web files. Well, it does serve them, and it serves them pretty fast, but nowhere as fast as Nginx can, running on Linux, for example. Okay, so what is Wave server for? Wave server is our backbone server for serving dynamic content from your code that you write, your business logic you write in NFX. So if you look at the anatomy, or at the inner workings of the site, so you would see just a regular console app. This is a regular console app where I have this spawning this service, and then I block with readline. And then what happens next is that in this config file that I have here, I set up all of my website, everything I need to work to serve the content. So if we go, and this is a standard regular NFX configuration file, and if we scroll down to Wave, and here is my server section, and then I declare my environment name. This is, I'll show you why it's needed. It's like needed for something like this. You can have two kinds of resources embedded, but we'll come to this in a second here. I have this open twice. So the first thing you have a prefixes that where you listen for the traffic. And if, for those of you who are familiar with Microsoft syntax, that's what it is. It is just a protocol, then the pattern match for the site, and then the port. Okay, so I hang the site to the 8080 port, and it starts listening for the requests. The default error handler is where all of your errors finally count to the default error handler, and you can do some show the error or log the error, stuff like that. Then the most interesting thing that goes next is the gate. Okay, the gate comes before the dispatcher. The dispatcher is the entity that dispatches the request to the handler. The gate comes before it. The reason being is gate is a network device, and the way how gates are implemented in NFX in the I/O network gate. The concept of the gate has nothing to do with the web. You can actually gate any kind of traffic, and it doesn't even have to be an IP traffic, because the traffic is abstracted here in the iTraffic interface. Okay, and there is a traffic direction, incoming and outgoing, and then HTTP incoming traffic is the kind of iTraffic. Okay, and general traffic used for testing and stuff like that. You can use that as well. So you can use gate in any kind of service that you want to protect from bad activities. So for example, theoretically, you could do, let's say you have a server that listens to a USB connections on the USB port to your computer. Let's say that you want to prevent someone who puts too many, slides the card in, takes it out, slides it in, takes it out, or something like that. You could use gate for that. Although gate has nothing to do with IP, or rather here. USB has nothing to do with IP. You could use gate for that as well. Here we use gate for as a sentinel in front of our web server, where we can set up the rules and groups and put the IP masks and everything. And the most interesting thing is that this server is stateful. I mean, the gate is stateful. So let's say that someone here, I mean, I have a rule here commented out, but we can uncomment it for a second. So the session flood rule, for example, action is deny from expression. So let's say that the variable becomes flows over this expression, and then that means that someone tries to create more and more sessions, and that IP will be denied. Someone tries to create a session and obliterates the session cookie, so the server keeps creating the new session, let's say, new session ticket. You can stop that. You can say this IP address cannot create any more sessions, and then you can see here it says variable definition decay by 1 within a 20-second interval. So basically what this does, that sets a threshold level right here, where it says anyone who has created more sessions than you're gonna get 403 access denied. So I think this is self-explanatory. Now, the rest of the stuff here, you can set up groups with the pattern matches, and then you can say from address or from groups or session flood, I beg your pardon. It's right here actually. New session is more than 3. So if you have more than 3 requests for the new session, that IP gets denied access. For how long? Depends on this decay by 20 seconds. Okay, so this is pretty powerful stuff. It is more powerful even because you can dynamically intrude. You can dynamically manage this. You can intrude into this process as an administrator and put those policies when the service is running, and let's say some hacker started bombarding your server, and then you can put a policy in place that will just deny the access from this IP segment of the network or that range or whatever. So those things are. Now, some people ask me, why do you have it? Why don't you use hardware? Well, firstly, the hardware that allows you to do like DDoS attacks is not cheap and certainly should be used as the first line of defense in any case. This is the second line of defense. This is if someone comes into your site and starts to, let's say someone starts to abuse a credit card and makes more than 10 purchases every 10 minutes. Then you can say, no, you cannot do that. You cannot make more than 10 purchases on the credit card. So there is no way I can tell the hardware firewall that I have to stop hardware purchases from this IP address. Now, the reason the gate device is in front of the dispatcher, because theoretically you can use it in the TCP server before you when you accept the connection, before you accept the socket, you can check against the bad address list, and then you can deny TCP connection even before accepting it. That is why it is like a system definition, and again, it's optional, and you can disable it here, or you can just include this. I mean, do not include this section, then there is no gate. Okay, that's simple. Dispatcher. The dispatcher is the entity that dispatches the request to the handler. The server, the wave server, is a hybrid server. That means that it doesn't use a thread per request or request per thread. It can use any kind of combinations. The default dispatcher uses the request from the thread from the thread pool for request processing, but then if you have a case where you need like to keep many like WebSockets and stuff, when you need to keep 25,000 sessions, whatever, many sockets open, and you want to have one thread that services them all, say chat messages, it delivers to 25 connections or 5,000 connections or whatever, you can do that because the dispatcher it's injectable. You can create your own dispatcher, and you can actually serve everything from one thread with a message loop, just like, let's say, Node.js does. So unlike IIS, which is extremely inflexible, this is very flexible. Okay? By default, it does a thread per request, okay, because that's the simplest and most effective model for the most cases. Okay, for the most business cases, okay, but not for all. That's why you can create your own dispatcher, and creating your own dispatcher is a business of writing 200, 300 lines of code. That's all. Now, once the request comes on the dispatcher, it goes through the series of filters, and they're all injectable, as you can see. The filters are executed in the order of their declaration, of their specification here. Order 1, order 0, order 1. So every filter is of a certain type, of course. So the order 0, I usually put the error filter. That's the guy who puts the front page or nice looking page for errors, exceptions, and stuff. Okay. Now, there are tons of things here, like security redirect. You can redirect security exceptions to a different URL. You can do a custom error page. You can inject the type of your page. You can log, or you can show dump of your errors only to those who match this condition. Now, look at this thing here called a match. A match is an injectable, that's another thing. It's an injectable class that implements match interface or descends from the match class. The match has filter parameters. There are like 25 or 30 of them by default. One of them is local. True. That means that the show dump is only gonna, the dump of those errors is only gonna do if this match works. And if the request is local, this match is going to be made, and then the show dump is going to activate. The match framework, or rather the match concept, is used here in many places. Everything is built around it. Okay, it's very easy to understand and very easy to use. Here, the log. See this commented section here, the log. If I want to log, if you know, this match is going to match everyone, and in this match I'm going to put the variable name AAA default 1, 2, 3, 4. So this message is going to come into the log. This variable is going to be injected in the log. Okay, so the matches are also used for variables and stuff. Okay, here another filter, redirect filter. So the redirect filter is, it has an interesting concept here, not path. So the path cannot be this, and then it has to have an absent cookie, which is called this with this value, and then I'm going to redirect you to this location here. So what is this used for? This is used for like protection of your website. You don't want Google or someone to scan your site, so you can put a stupid filter, a redirect filter that will redirect you somewhere else unless you have a cookie with some secret word in it. It's not a security measure. It's just a nuisance for someone who doesn't know some secret cookie. If you don't have the secret cookie, you are not going to see my site. That's simple. Okay? This is for developers. This is used for developers. But redirect filter is a powerful filter that allows you just to redirect your users based on different match conditions. Okay. Sessions. The session filter injects the session, and you can put the session timeout here. You can override it, and you can put the name of the cookie, and you can put a lot of other things like the cipher token, how you want to cipher your cookie, and all of that stuff. Okay. Another filter that, again, redirect filter. So let's say a match of path old WHTML is going to redirect you to pages welcome. The old AU-HTML is going to redirect you to pages about us. That's very self-explanatory. Again, matches are used within this filter, okay? So all of the requests, they trickle down this dispatcher, from the dispatcher through the gate first, down the dispatcher through all of the filters, and the filter can stop the request or send you a redirect, and then you come to the handler. So see, there are many handlers now within the dispatcher. So which do we pick? Now we start going through the matches of the handler. So let's take this. So see, here is the pass. And let's say our URL has this. If it does, it's going to capture those in those variables, and is going to capture the rest of the query variables in, everything. It's going to capture everything. That means just take everything. And it will call the MVC test handler that has the controllers in this assembly and in this namespace. See this NS type location name local assembly, and you can have multiple here. Those are attributes of this handler, because this is MVC handler. And again, this MVC handler takes about 200 lines. That's the whole MVC framework. It's tiny. There is nothing there, and it is so flexible that you'll just see it in a second. The dumper, context dumper is a debug dump. It dumps your execution context. That's what it does, okay? And if I say dump in my URL request, this is what I'm gonna land at. This is where I'm gonna land in this handler section. Embedded site. If I say embed, then whatever is taken into the path. Embedded test site handler. Okay, and where is this embedded test site handler? I have it right here. I'll show it to you in a second. The embedded test site handler is right here. Okay, this is not an MVC framework I'm showing to you. MVC is just one type of the handler. That's it. You see, it's not like ASP.NET has this and this and that. In this framework, everything is unified. You don't need to install MVC separately. Alright, so the embedded handler allows you to embed the whole website. Here are my pictures. Oh, okay. That's my picture. Okay, so here's my pictures and my test content, and I want to serve it. I want to serve this content. Those are compiled resources right in the DLL, and that's why I see dev and prod. Remember, I showed you this production and development environment. Those are very handy for it. You can specify in one place here, and it will put either these or those resources. So, in any case, so that's the embedded test site handler. Another handler is a template handler. A template handler takes your template and renders it as a page. For those of you who are familiar with ASPX files, dynamic pages, or ASP files in the classic ASP, or Java server pages, JSP, and stuff like that, this is what it is. And again, this does not require any MVC framework. You can dynamically create pages. And here, again, we say the type, where the pages are. So if we go to pages, here is the list of my dynamic pages. Okay, here's my dynamic page, and we'll talk about it in a second. So I can serve that. And then stock content embed handler. I have some stock content, like my JavaScript framework for the client side is embedded right in this system DLL here. So I don't need to copy any files. I never copy any files. I deal with components. I am a component-oriented developer, if that makes sense. I'm not a file-oriented developer, okay? So when I do that, I just need to access some stock, some system content, which is this handler, stock content site handler, that is implemented in the NFX WAVE, and that just gives you like flags for the countries, JavaScript files and whatnot. So another handler, if we go one row down, this handler has a set of filters. So if we get into this handler, the request starts to get through all of the filters here. So here, I have a security handler here that says that the permission has to be this. If the calling user doesn't have those permissions. And if you don't have a session, you don't have permission. But you have to have a session context injected, okay? And if you do not, then this is going to fail and you're going to get access denied. And of course, you can put permissions in your templates and on your controller actions. But this is a more general way of just locking out the whole handler with the security filter. And I'm sure that for those of you who are familiar with Microsoft MVC, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, only this is much simpler. The stopper does some pattern matching and stops the processing. For here I have some stupid interesting thing. Okay, if my parameter who contains the word lining, and it's not case sensitive, I think I can put a regular expression pattern match here, then I'm going to give you return you an error that with the message Lenin was stopped. Whatever. Don't ask me questions. This is a test site, okay? I can use whatever I want. Okay, the logger. I want to log my requests. You know, like in IIS, you log, you have a check mark to log. In NFX, everything is unified. So if you want to log, you can use the logging filter, and then before and after match. That means if the before match is going to execute, then you're going to log before the filter at the filter entrance, at the filter prologue. The after is going to match the filter epilogue. That is when you exit from the filter. Okay, so when right in the center, you will get to the body of your handler. So basically, your handler here is surrounded by before and after clause of this filter. You see what I'm saying? And then you can inject those variables in your log. So in your log, you can inject a parameter, say my name is ABCD, whatever, and then it's going to come here. And then another interesting thing here is that for those who have permissions, only those guys are going to get the log message after the request was processed. You can do a lot of stuff here, and this is all combinational. You just combine the config options here, and of course you can do all of this with code. You can inject filters and matches and everything with code at runtime. But the practical point of doing that is, I don't think it has a lot of practical value, because it's easier to stipulate all of those contracts in your laconic configuration file, and you're all done. So you just write some classes and then you assemble them in the lacon file, and you're done. So the downloader handler is a file download handler that is mounted to this local path. Okay, and by the way, this $sign here means that do not treat this as a character escape. You know, from familiar with C# verbatim strings, what they are. This is the similar concept. Okay, this is in the laconic configuration. That's a symbol for verbatim string. Okay, and then either download file path or Z file path for this test case, of course. And then I can say attachment. If you know what a content disposition header, that is, if you download the file, it would either display it to you in the browser, or it will say, do you want to save it? And then it would also suggest the name of the file. It also supports chunk upload or download and all of that kind of stuff. It's right here, and you can manipulate through the parameters here with defaults. Okay, and finally we come to catch-all, because the catch-all is going to match everything. You see match, and then there's just empty parentheses, okay, or square or angle or whatever they're called, curly braces. Okay, and then we're going to have a filter that I don't even know why this filter is here. I was testing something. I don't know. Okay. As far as security goes, my security provider for this test site is Config Security Manager. Is Security Manager that keeps your security right in your config file, right here. Okay, that's the most stupidest and simplest security manager that you can get. And again, the security manager has nothing to do with Active Directory or Active or whatever other Microsoft technologies are used. It is all Unistack. It's all in one place here. So here I have a user with those rights and test path, test permission level 150. That's what I have. User with this password. Again, this stuff, don't tell me that this is unsecure, blah, blah, blah. This is a not so secure security manager to begin with. But you know what? For 95% of simple sites, it works. Because you can, let's say you can delineate between anonymous users and 2-3 admins that you want to have on your site. You can store those admins right here in your config file. That's it for your small back office, website. And of course, if you want to have professional security, there are other security managers you can use, but that's not the topic of this video. So I think the config file is self-explanatory. Let's now look at the guts of this Wave test site, what it has inside. So first of all, the templates. We do not use Razor. We do not use any kind of other templating engine other than the one that is provided by NFX. The NFX has NFX templatization namespace that has a template which is an abstract template that can templatize WAV files, MP3 files, graphical files, textual files, any kind of other files you want. Why does the template have to be only for web pages? This is absolutely idiotic. But most of the templates are, of course, textual. That's why we have a text C# template compiler. This is the compiler that understands the textual templates, and it uses C# as its backbone syntax, and it builds and compiles your your markup. Okay, so let's look at the welcome page here. So first of all, I have a pragma here for my template, just like you have it for your ASPX stuff that you like or you don't like, whatever. Similar concept. I have a base class namespace, only I don't have a special syntax for it. Of course, I use my configuration, or I could use an XML configuration, then I would use XML here. So this is interpreted at the compile time, okay? And then it says my base class name, my namespace, my abstract and summary for my class. Then I have regions. So for example, for my class, I write some code right here. So the region comes this sharp mark with square brackets, and then I can override my functions like this. For those of you who are familiar with ASPX, with master pages and everything, it's a horrible mess. I cannot stress and tell you how easier it is here to do the similar concept without those idiotic master pages, regions, and all of that stuff that Microsoft has created within the past 15 or 10 years or 15 years, whatever. 15 is now, like 12 years probably. So this page, this welcome page, it inherits from master page. So if you look at the master page, this is an abstract class. It says here abstract class, and it has render header, render body. So this is just, what is a template? Template is just a way to write more text in your code. That's it. Now think about it. It is a code file, but where you write more of a textual content instead of writing more code. In C# file, you write some textual content in the string constants, and you write code most of the time. Here, most of the time, you write content, and less of the times you write code. You write C# code. So I can access properties like this. You see, this is my property, okay? Yeah, I don't have syntax highlighting in Visual Studio. Excuse me. Someone tells me that's the deal killer for them. Well, I feel sorry for you if the syntax highlighting is the primary function and you don't value anything else. But most of the people understand. And again, it's possible to do a plugin for Visual Studio so it does a proper syntax highlighting. I had never had any intentions for it, okay, and I don't have time. So if you want to create a syntax highlighting for the templatization in NFX, you're welcome to do it. So here I generate some CSS, blah blah blah, and then default footer, so here is the function. Here is the function. I create a private function called default footer, and that's how I implement it. And then render footer, where is my function render footer? I think it's somewhere here. Render footer just calls default footer, and I can implement it in any page. Okay, so you get the picture. So what this compiles into, it compiles into a C# file right here. And there is no magic here, because if we come to the properties of this file, and we'll look at the build events. In the pre-build section, you're going to meet the tool called NTC, NFX Template Compiler. NFX Template Compiler is a command line tool. It has nothing to do with web at all. Like I said, your templates can be audio templates, graphical templates, PDF templates, anything you want. The NTC would compile anything. It's just a tool that launches the template compiler. Okay. The thing here is that before build, I scan all of the files that have an HTML extension, and I recursively generate source files without compiling the assembly, because this tool can actually compile the assembly for me. I don't want any assembly, I just need the source. That's why I have the source switch here, and I create auto C#. Okay, and here I have a pragma for my source control system to not include any auto C# files into my source control. That makes sense, right? So the file turns into something like this. Here. This is what ASP.NET does for you on the fly. Only here you have this as a part of your solution. Consequently, you don't have to configure any folders. Like ASP.NET has folders that it manages in the background, private folders, temp folders, and all of that stuff. You don't have any of this stuff here. Here you have all of your business logic intertwined with your constants, and this is 100% debuggable. Now, again, trust me, this is much easier to use than ASP.NET because of this. Though this may sound cryptic for you at first glance. Now imagine if I have some if statement or something and I want to debug. I open this file, which is not a part of my source control, again, because it has been generated from this file, and I just put here a breakpoint. And I can stop here in debug time, and because I don't use IIS, my debugging is instantaneous. The run of this process, to activate the process, I just hit F5 and instantly I have it running. Okay, so that's how you debug your stuff. Of course, you don't write any of your stuff here, you write it here. You write it here. Okay, so someone could come and create a better, syntax highlighter for Visual Studio. Like I said, I don't have time for it. I don't see any practicality for myself. If you guys want to do it, that's fine. I'm all for it. Okay, so the pages are here. Now let's look at something else. Let's look at our controllers. Okay, so this is for the MVC framework, the integration tester. The controllers are very powerful. Okay, you just inherit from this class controller, an NFX WAVE MVC controller. Okay, and what this allows you to do, it allows you to do all kinds of stuff. Name parameters with optional arguments, with the default arguments, and unlike Microsoft concept, you can return an object from your action method. So what that means, a use of the ad hoc permission. Ad hoc meaning it's not declared anywhere, it's just a textual name. Okay, or you can have imperative permissions or declarative permissions as well. You can declare a permission in the code. A permission is a class in NFX, unlike in the Microsoft paradigm. Okay, so at any rate, you can put a lot of permissions here. to protect your methods, you can put a permission on your whole controller class. You can do that as well. Okay, and then what happens is, here's how I return my JSON. Look at this beauty. Get anonymous object ID 55 name test. I'm gonna get a JSON payload back to the client. So now I can have multiple actions, row get, row set. With this is gonna match. See, I can use my match syntax here as well in the attribute. And the reason why I did it this way, I could have created an attribute for the match and called it match attribute. It's just way easier to do it here, because then what can happen, you can just copy it from here and move it to your config file, okay, or move it from config file here, okay. You less typing. Here I return a complex payload, and it will return a JSON to your client, okay. And you know, get and post, I delineate between the two here in this, and you can also work with byte arrays and everything, and you can complex pattern matching, you know, with like N, S, and so this will work with either post or get. And it will, if you do get, it will pass the query parameters, or if you do a post with URL encoding, it will parse that, and it will even parse this complicated class, or complex rather type, and then it will return you it will return you the row. This row that is going to come here, it will return that row with a different way of encoding rows as map or map as arrays and stuff like that. All of that stuff is handled here. Okay, it's pretty flexible stuff. Now, a few things about type conversion here. And I believe this is somewhere here, load tester. So here is the patient, okay, a patient model, what you call it. Only the model here, we have nothing, models here have nothing to do with MVC. Models are general concepts, they have nothing to do with web. We have something called CRUD, create, update, delete, and we have a type there called typed row. That is the row of data that has a type to it. So the schema is defined in C#. We have dynamic rows that you can dynamically create at runtime, or you have a typed row, that is the row that is typed at runtime. Because typed row is an abstract class. You need to derive from it. It's an abstract serializable class, and it has a cached schema, but it doesn't have a schema stored in it. Okay, so we're going to talk about maybe in some other video, but once I do this and put some meta information there, metadata, okay, I can now generate interface, user interface, right on the client, and shove those rows down the client's throat automatically. I don't need to write any code. And this also understands the multi-part encoding and everything, so you can like do the download and stuff. So here I return a action, what do you call it? Action result. I return a redirect. I can do it just like in Microsoft Paradigm you do. I can return a page. See, I return a page. What user is going to see an HTML file of the page. Okay? And here I'm going to get a redirect to yahoo.com. Here I'm going to get a file back as an attachment. If you say attachment true, it will put it as an attachment. And here you have to have a permission to see the string coming from the server, the echo. The JSON data map is basically, that's what it is. It's like a dictionary, okay? It's a data transfer object. And I return this, what do you call it? I wrap the JSON data map in the anonymous type and put it here. The CAPTCHA, you know what the CAPTCHA is? It's built into in our framework as well. Okay, and this is how you can do some custom captcha processing, and here I create a record with some metadata. Check this out. I can have lookup dictionaries, I can have different kinds of stuff. It's all here. It's all right here. And then I can even put the localizer delegate here, that I can say description, the name of the field description, the value private status, let's translate it into Russian, let's say, okay, or any other language, and we can talk about it some other time. And localization is the part of this framework, and everything is localizable. Error messages, even enumerated type. You see here, beginner, advanced, master. You can even translate this as well. Okay, we can talk about it some other time. Here I have various categories: car driver, smoker, religious person, blah blah blah. So if I connect a field on the client to this value, to this field here, various, called various, that's the name of the field, I would rather get a combo box or a set of radio buttons or something. Okay, I can do that. The multi-part upload is just a byte array, and the system will understand that this field is a binary field and needs to be uploaded here. So let's give it a spin. Can talk about it for much longer, but let's give it a spin. So wave test site, there I go, run it. That's the video recorder window. If I go run it, I just double click on it. Okay, my server is up and running. That's all I needed to do. And if I'm not mistaken, I go to localhost 8080, right? Okay, here's my site. And this site looks like garbage because it's a test site, of course. I mean, it's not pretty, but who cares? Somewhere here, I guess this one. Okay, here. Look at this JSON payload. This is all of the data that has been harvested from those record type rows, if you recall. And now automatically this interface is going to appear here along with capture. Okay? Not capture. CAPTCHA, computer-aided Turing test. And now a few words about this guy here. This is a double CAPTCHA or dual CAPTCHA. First of all, you need to be a human being to read and understand the question that I ask here. And I change the question every time. Not in this test, but I mean in general I do. Like, for example, I say, please tell me what is 5 plus 5, or something like that. Then to put the result back, you need to type this by punching these numbers on this chaotic cut things from the newspaper or something, okay? And you put your request here. So what happens is you send to the server an array of X and Y pairs where you click with your mouse, okay? And then the server will decipher this into the string that you entered or not, okay? So I hope that makes sense to you. So this is just an image. This is an image. And if I refresh this page, the image is going to be a different image. It's a PNG image, okay, that you can style and restyle with different styles, but it is generated on the server, and the coordinate boxes for those guys here are kept on the server. So why is this so important? Say someone wants to install a keyboard hook to capture your passwords or something. This is not going to work because there are no keystrokes to capture. Now, some of you may say, wait a second, this is not user accessibility of this for like people who are don't have a mouse or something. I would agree with you, but this is very usable for touch devices like touch tablets and stuff like that. Okay. Now I want you to pay attention to these two fields here. See public status and private status. I got this whole big sandwich of XHTML or whatever it's called, HTML5 controls created for you from this metadata that we have. Remember I showed you this metadata here. Enter your first name, case caps or something like that. Oh, my mouse battery is dying. Okay. So here, enter your first name. See? That's what I'm talking about. Okay, and then it will capitalize whatever it needs to capitalize or lowercase and everything. wrong value for field date of birth. So 1111 whatever. Okay, good. As you can see, and those blue lines indicate that the field has changed. Now, this doesn't look pretty because this is just a test site. All of this is customizable. But what I'm showing to you here is called WV.JS. Wave JavaScript. It's a JavaScript version of the framework, counterpart of the server framework on the client. And if we go and look at the code here, and we are going to see, we're not going to see this code. Here's my form. Look at this form here. This is all the data entry form here, where I move my mouse. And here's the source code for that form in the HTML page. And we have the data annotations. You see data, wave, and those are the name of the fields that we have. Where do we have them? They have them in code. These are the name of the fields. And it will extract the metadata, and it will populate. So those divs are like controls that you place on the form. Those are components, okay? What they call it, component-oriented architecture, or whatever. Not in terms of like web controls, but it's like or whatever. There is a term now that they want to create those web controls as a series of subtags within a tag. Okay, I don't have 5 years to wait until W3C standardizes on it, so that's why I created my own. And what it does, it takes that div and it builds within it X number of elements to satisfy the contract for this field. So here, you see this word salary, and this is the name for the field various, and I want to emphasize to the framework that I want it to be a radio button, because had I created, where is it, various, right here, had I not stated this, it would have made it into a drop-down box instead. Okay, so I can also control some translation. So see, this is translated into Russian. This is not into English. This is not an English word. Okay. And this is not English either. And that is why. Because I have injected somewhere here, I don't remember where I showed you. I have injected a localizer, right here, a static localizer that translates salary into заработная плата in Russian and private status into частный статус in Russian. Okay. And you can support multiple languages, and you can put all of those translations in config file. This is a test where I do it by code. I show it how to do it with imperative code. That's why I did it in code here. Okay, and then when I submit this, I submit either JSON or a form URL encoded. All of that is going to be understood, and once I submitted it, it returned back to me JSON result. Okay. CRUD field validation exception schema field this, please answer the question correctly. And it knows how to parse all of the errors and put it back in place and all of that stuff. Okay, or you can post this using Ajax. And all of that stuff. So, but the way how you connect it to the server, you create a class called record model record, and you connect that record with that stuff on the server, and then it does reactive programming for you. It reacts to the change here and posts it, to the server and all of that. This kind of crappy test here, I need to do a better test to illustrate what I'm talking about, because I did a lot of things by hand here just to see how it internally works. But the interesting part of it is this. Now you have all of these fields accessible in here, and instead of working with what do you call it, with selectors and everything, you can work with field model. You have a view model here on the, you have a model on the server, then you have another view model saturated from the server on the client, and you can program against the view model on the client, and your view here will reactively react, pardon the tautological thing here, it will reactively react to what you change in your view model. Okay. What I'm talking about is this. You make some field enabled or disabled because, so let's say if I say beginner, I want to disable this whole field here. How do I do it? Very easy. I put the status change on this field and value change. If the value of this field is beginner, then this enabled of this field is false. Not of the control, but of the view model. So field date of birth dot enabled equals false. All of this control, so to speak, would become inactive. And just to show you what I'm talking about in terms of like builder, so here it builds this stuff into the field. You see all of that crap? Look at this. Imagine you would need to write all that by hand. Okay, it creates all of that stuff for you. Okay, so, and if we look at the connected headers here, there are no third-party libraries again, but very basic jQuery, but we want to get rid of that as well because we rarely use it either. So, but everything here is in the WV.JS. That is the, and it's not compressed and it's very small. We compress it in the production environment. It's like 25 kilobytes or something. But it does all of that logic that I talked about. It has those record views, records, size, min size, max size, enabled, read-only, visible, password, you know, if it's a password field, control type, default value, hint, blah, 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 blah. There just tons of stuff. Tons of like things like to normalize US phones and US zip codes, and to do, you know, like compare the object's property string, you know, as object property string value if converts to the object map, does nothing, property does not exist. A lot of stuff. HTML template, string trimmers, you know, capitalizers of string contains a string ensure ending, blah 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 blah, XML, HTML escapes, HTML templates, is valid screen name. Screen name is a special kind of type that is very used for IDs and stuff. It's supported here and is parsed here, and so it's the whole thing. I mean, everything you need to do to create a system. So one more time. So if I just hit enter here, the process terminates instantly. If I run it, I have it here. So let me show one last thing before we go. So now let's say I have this crappy site that I've created for testing. Okay, this guy right here, and I want to reuse that site in some other project. Now you'd say, why would you reuse a website? Here is why. Imagine I have an admin portal. You know, I want to do an administrative function of some piece of software, and I don't want to create the site 25 times. It's easy. You create the admin portal, and you create it as a component, and you deploy it as a component, okay, as a class. You just activate it in some other process. You have a website. That's simple. Let me illustrate what I'm talking about here. So here I have a command line for OM cluster, and OM cluster is a framework for building massive parallel applications. And I'm going to run a host governor process, okay? And once I did this, it activated all of the processes that should run on this host. Now, as a part of this deal I get from this guy, I can do localhost. And I do and I get this now. I get a login. I get a login for the administrator for this process. Now, one more time. This is the process. This is a cluster. It's a server process. It's a server that runs on the cluster node. Okay. It has no website in it. Not have any. It has nothing. It's not a web server. It's a cluster process. It's a host governor. It's a process that installs all of the software on this host, runs the software. It's like a micro operating system for your application. Okay. And once I ran it, I automatically get a management website on this host, because all of the processes in the cluster, they have management websites built in. Check this out. Okay. So, and I have to be logged in to be able to log in any of this, menu items here. So here we see the name of my computer, and I have fake cluster environment set up on this machine. So I'm a US Cleveland A1 Windows Medium Instance 001, and my process is AHGov, that means ALM Host Governor Service. Okay, and it tells me the name of my process here in this. Okay, so if I remember my password. Okay, I have just logged in. I have just logged into my service, and again, this is not a web server. Having a web server within the service is just a side effect of using ARM cluster technology and NFX WAVE. And here is my current CPU usage within the system. Okay, I have some warnings here. Okay, and let's go to the instrumentation and look at the log of this. Okay. I have some error messages because I have not configured this thing correctly on my local host. It tries to spawn the subordinate process and it fails. Okay, but the point here is this. I have a log viewer, a live log viewer that feeds it from the service. Okay, and look, this is a pretty complex website, wouldn't you think? Okay. And here, another thing I have, and this is, by the way, a good illustration of what NFX application container is. Those are components of my application. So this application, inside of it, has an application container. Those application container has components in it. And those components, those are logical components. They're all listed here. Okay? So let's look at the logger. So here in the logger, we have a CSV file destination and memory buffer, two destinations working under this director, how we call it. This is the director service. This is a service that has two subordinate nodes in it. What's interesting about it is that I can, in runtime, I can manage and change those properties here through this web interface. Okay, now this is all built using Wave. That's the reason why I show it to you guys. Okay, so let's look at the, let's say I want to start the instrumentation. So I open this instrumentation provider. All I need to do is just click this button. That's it. The instrumentation has started. Okay, and then I can look at the instrumentation charts, and that is going to show me the performance counters of this process. But I'd rather use a named preset. Okay, and here is my performance counters coming in real time from my process. Okay, I can select those additional performance counters, selecting them here. Okay, and I can collapse this tree so it doesn't show here, and I can extend this timeline like this. Okay, and I can see either the tree I can build by class of the instrument, like iCache instrument. Those are going to be instruments that tell you whatever happens with your caching in your memory. Put count, hit count, miss count. Those are your, and those are different. Now within the counter you have different. Here is the metadata that tells you what the cache does, what this counter does. But anyhow, this video is not about instrumentation, but this is just to show you what kind of sites you can do with NFX WAVE. And this checkmark does either a linear or logarithmic scale. Okay, and what's interesting here is that all of this stuff is written using written using, this is my CPU usage, by the way, and why it denses from 5 to 15% because I have screen video recording going on. And this is my work context buffer response bytes for the Wave server. I can see how many bytes are written to the response queue. This guy shows me it here, and I can put a logarithmic scale here. Okay, so you get the picture. So what this does, it shows you the different parameter groups. This is all built using Wave. You see how fast it is? It's very extremely efficient. The Wave server can this machine that we're on right now, it can easily serve 80,000 requests a second using that pipeline that I showed you, which is not a small pipeline. It has a lot of filters, handlers, and all of that stuff. Okay, so that is the good example of what we can do. Here is another example. This is my console for the server, so I can see who's connected who, and I see the name of the session, and I can do some crappy induce some crappy traffic on the site, on the toil. Will create some toil for the CPU, like garbage work, okay, and which it did. Then we can do garbage collect our heap, and it has freed that many bytes, blah blah blah. This is the help, tells you what commands the administrator understands. One of the things we can do here is Seaman. Seaman is a component manager. It prints you the tree of the components within your application container, and you can manage those components from command line, or you can do it here using this guys here, but of course doing it from the command line is easier for scripting and batch processing. Okay. And in the cluster view here, we have all of the nodes, show you the CPU usage on the node, and then you can navigate. You see the processes that run on those nodes. Those are the name, and you can hyper jump in the slide for every the slide, just like this one. You can hyper jump, hyperlink. You can jump into the site in the cluster on the different machine. And let's say we're in Africa right now, in Cairo Cyber Center. And let's say we have this stuff running right now here, and this is running on my local computer for the test purpose right now, but one server has a problem with it. We would see a high usage here, so we can double click here and go to the process that causes it, and that way we can traverse the whole cluster environment, see what the hell is going on. Anyhow, this website was built using NFX WAVE, and because it is a component, every process in the cluster has a management website, just like this one. And you don't need to create one, you don't need to write one, you don't need to put any style, CSS or font files or whatnot. It's all done for you. It's all automatic. It's all in there. And if we look at the source here, again, you just get the, a regular blah 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 blah. Here is all of your scripts. They're served right from the DLL. Okay, very easy to maintain, and no third-party frameworks. Power of Unistack. And I hope that was informative and helpful for those of you who want to develop with NFX WAVE, which is our Wave web technology. The web assembly here, NFX Web, it has email queue processing, geo lookup for converting an IP address to a physical address. It has pay framework, that's for payment processing. We're going to do a different video. This is if you want to charge credit cards and do bank transfers. Social, this is the full social OAuth, OpenAuth framework integrated in this, and it's all integrated in Wave as well. But at some point we supported portions of ASP.NET. We do not support them anymore because it's just a huge code bloat, and I don't have any use case for ASP.NET. Once I created this NFX Wave thing, I don't use ASP.NET, and I don't use Microsoft MVC, Razor, and all of those goodies. Razor is a cool engine, no questions asked, but it is so bloated, and you cannot just easily drop it in as a small file in your solution. You have dependencies. You cannot use Razor to process bitmap or graphic files and other files because it's just a narrow-minded template processor. And in NFX, we have a much broader spectrum of things that we can do with lesser, narrower code base. Less code, more things that we can get done. And that concludes this video for today. Thank you for watching.